reputation. We have about 250 participants who have registered today, attendees who have registered for this session and are looking forward to learning from this session today. A very warm welcome to all of you. We have 15 plus panelists today who will discuss how they are managing the current global crisis that is upon all of us. A very warm welcome to each of our panelists. And a special thanks and welcome to Bianca Gose, who's the Chief Storyteller at Wipro, for agreeing to moderate this panel today. Without wasting a single minute, over to you now, Bianca, to take this session ahead.
Hi, I'm finally unmuted. So thanks very much, Anubhuti. It's a very powerful gathering. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, we can just hear you, can't see you.
Yeah, no, visible.
That's that's fine, as long as you can hear me, because I can see all of you. I'm not sure what's going on with the network. I think there's tremendous pressure on bandwidth in the last couple of days now that everybody in the world is connecting through data. But thanks very much, Reputation Today's core, for organizing this and also for asking me to hold this conversation together. All of you, you're leading very large, diversified, pan-India, sometimes even pan-Asia teams. And so with all of us just sitting at home and trying to adjust to this new normal that we've entered into, thinking about what's next, how can we help, what's the responsibility of comms and PR, right? So this gathering, I think, couldn't have come at a better time. And maybe we'll do more of these. It's a fast evolving global crisis. For all of you who've joined today, thanks very much as well. So all of you know who's on the panel, so I'm not going to do like a roll call of sorts, but just some basic ground rules. I ask, you respond. Please keep it to roughly about 3 odd minutes. If you have a counterpoint, absolutely, welcome. But I suggest we finish one round of responses for each of you before we get to a debate. I love debates, but 50 odd minutes followed by questions. And for those of you who are listening in, watching, can you please type in your name and your organization, and I will read out the questions. I'll take them to the speakers. And yeah, so I wanted to start off, maybe Nitin, with you. We're entering this new normal, right? But we know that there are a few understood truths right now. Near global lockdown, almost all of our team members, we're working from home. There's naturally some anxiety with the basics, right? Access to food, childcare, medical services, what you will. And our ways of working with clients, with vendors, with production partners, they're changing by the hour. Travel and logistics has been disrupted. In all of this, we have to lead through this crisis. So how? Initial thoughts from you, Nitin.
Yeah, I think this crisis, it's, I think nobody's been used to such a big pandemic, whether it's PR firms or whether it's brand, whether it's organizations. And it's, many brands are stepping up and doing good. I think where communicators can play a role is actually to support their clients and their staff at this time. Many brands are only stepping up for the greater good of the customers and communities. We've heard of many instances like LV and Pernod Ricard making hand sanitizers from the products of vodka bottles and perfumes, for example. Even in India, Mahindra, for example, is committed to making ventilators. So, we just need to support. That's one. Also, the new normal is changing, and today, we're all becoming crisis communicators. Many of us in these uncertain times, communication will remain a business critical need in my view. And we're seeing that play out in many ways. So, they not only do they have to insulate the business from the risk, they also have to be quick to respond to customers and focus on safety of the stakeholders. Right? So most companies have not functioned during this pandemic before, like I mentioned before, and crisis therefore become a PR mainstay. So
Yeah.
having successfully navigated clients through Ebola, H1N1, SARS, I think PR firms are very well placed to respond to all these new challenges. Um, I will stop here now. I think my 2 minutes are up. Well, that's a lot for communicators to do.
Of course, of course. And I also wanted to get another viewpoint from a CEO's perspective, and someone who's got a pan-India team, but also has a global network. Val, what are your thoughts? And I'd be keen to know if you can layer in a global perspective to this as well, in terms of the role of comms in this, in your conversations that you're having with your peers in the IPG network.
Yeah, so the situation that we are faced with right now, the phase that we're going through, China has been through this, I think, about 3 months ago, and they're now only being able to come back to work. But it isn't during this period of time. What's extremely important for all of us to understand that CEOs of all the companies are under tremendous pressure. They have to actually, work on business continuity plans and how can we as comms, people work side by side with the CEOs to actually talk through business continuity plans and communicate them right across to various employees. Employees are concerned and anxious about whether I'm going to have a job or not. How do you set them keep them at bay or at rest? There's also a lot of work that's happening around how do you contribute back to the society at this point in time as well, from whatever that's happening, because as organizations, again, the CEO has to make this tough call on how do I protect my own people, or do I actually have funds to actually go out there and help others in this situation, and how do I communicate that in the right way. So I think as we're seeing from what happened in China and other parts of the world, the phase will come through is where you first have to set your employees at pace. Then you get into this business continuity challenge that you have to address. And then you have to talk about financial, stimulus packages, etc., so that you actually get everybody, motivated and pull through the entire team to get through this crisis. And I think, therefore, the pressures on the role of the CEO is very important. And being in communications, our role becomes even more important to be able to support them through different aspects of that communication. And that's our learning from how we've seen our teams from across the world actually, go through different phases of this crisis, especially learnings from our China team.
But this is like an age-old craft, right? PR, comms, marketing. It's a strategic management function, and it's never going to go away. So Sonia, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. How do you think your role is evolving? Your responsibility is changing as you guide and advise your C-suite during a crisis like this that humankind has never faced before, possibly in the last 100 years. Sonia, hi. Did you hear me? Can you hear me?
I don't think she's on the call.
I don't see her. Yeah, that's right. I don't see her either. So let me wait for Sonia to come in there, but maybe I can come to you, Anuj. And I was just looking through and reading up a little bit about how the DMRC has responded, right? I mean, you've got a huge responsibility of moving Delhi Eyes, right? I mean, I'm such a fan of the way that the DMRC has radically transformed, the entire the transportation landscape in Delhi NCR region. And so your decision to stop until the 14th, and then what happens thereafter, right? I want to know how did you, and your communications and media channels, how are they playing out to ensure that we're not going back to chaos? Anuj? I don't think I see him on the line right now, which is a bit surprising.
Bianca, Sonia is there. I think she just put
Yeah,
down the
Sonia
chat
just
saying
typed
that.
into the chat. She's around.
Hi guys,
I
can you
just
hear
see
me?
Sonia.
Ah, there she is.
Hi.
Hi everyone. Sorry
Hey,
about this.
Sonia.
Sorry about
No
this.
worries. We actually didn't realize you were not on the call.
No,
So
actually I was,
I had
but my video was off, so I could hear you and I could hear your question, and that's why I put it in the chat group as well. Okay, I'm really sorry. Get back to the question, I guess. Yeah.
no worries, no worries. So let me just go back to Anuj because I had a question
Yeah,
for him,
sure.
but I don't see him right now.
Okay.
I don't see Anuj right now. While we wait for Anuj to join back, maybe Sonia, if you heard my question, do you have a point to share with us in terms of how your role is sort of becoming more and more critical for your C-suite as you walk them through this crisis?
Yeah, so my two bits to this is that the objective is to humanize the organization. And this is the ethos that we are following for all our messaging, whether it's internal or external. And the parity that you can have for your messaging that's going out externally and internally, if you keep that ethos of humanizing the organization, then I think we've got this piece right. For example, all the communication that is first going out externally to the world at large, we are prefacing this from the CEO's desk to all the employees. So they kind of understand that, we are a socially responsible organization that can act as a force multiplier. I will just try and give you a very simple example. Last Sunday, the Honorable Prime Minister actually went on his first speech and spoke about the Janta curfew and requested everyone to kind of, set aside 5 minutes at 5 p.m. and appreciate the essential services category. So we at Viacom 18 kind of jumped in and said, how can we actually help him out with this? Given a network that is comprising of 53 channels, we decided that at about 5 p.m., all our networks will have a roadblock, and we started a campaign called Pause for a Cause, Applause and Cheer. So at 5 p.m. across the network, there was an absolute roadblock with a PSA urging people to not watch entertainment, which is what they end up doing, in cases like this. And they should actually be going to their balconies to appreciate the essential services. So this is something that we ran, and the government actually has kind of really appreciated our efforts. And this is where the force multiplier piece also comes in. That a network like, I mean, we were the only media and entertainment network to do something like this. The other piece on the internal communications, there were a lot of fears and anxiety amongst employees internally. What about our salaries? Is there going to be a cut? Is there going to be a rollback? We kind of reinforce the same messaging that, we are here for you and we're committed towards our employees by actually preponing the salary cycle by at least 10 days. So, it kind of reinforces the fact that, we are here, we are committed, we are in it with you, and we understand what you're going through. Yeah, pretty much I can go on and on, but yeah, I think I'll move on to the next.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't think financial empathy is, a matter of choice at a time like this. But you were talking about, Sonia, essential services.
Yes.
And so I wanted to go to change track slightly and maybe just focus a little bit on those of us who are supporting companies and brands and clients who are actually keeping the wheels of this economy moving, right? Whether it is about essential items or it's in saving and improving lives. And so I wanted to come to you, Jyotsna. We're all looking at healthcare and pharma companies right now to wheel us out of this crisis, right? Isolation and lockdowns, I guess, will only work to that extent, because if we don't have a cure for it on the way out, then we're pretty much at the same spot. And this sector, I'm sure, is feeling the weight of that. I know Merck just donated 500,000 masks, and just in New York alone, so I'm sure there's more coming. But tell us a little bit about preparedness and planning and vision and quick decision making and communicating that to your employees and to the world, because that's how you build comfort, right? And loyalty, because people love brands that care.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Bianca, and thank you for for just setting the context. See, as a healthcare company, first of all, I have to say that this is an unprecedented crisis. This is something that no one anticipated would happen and to this much extent, and we're all in it together like a global community. When I look at the role of communicators or strategic advisors, so I see our role as very, very critical and intrinsic to what's happening. There is anxiety, obviously. There are questions. How can healthcare companies step up? Are you doing something? Is there a cure? Is there a vaccine? There's so much of misinformation out there that is causing so much anxiety. Just the latest, this whole debate around hydrochloroquine and people just stocking up anti-malaria drugs, saying maybe I'll get protected, etc., and everything. There's so much going on that us communication professionals need to step up and to be a part of debunking the myths. So if I break down what we are doing right now and what needs to be done as communication professionals, obviously as a company that's committed to inventing for life, there's a lot that we're doing to see how can we collaborate to look at the right cure. How can we collaborate to look at the right vaccines, etc., and everything? Are there existing candidates that can help? And all of that. And that part, of course, is being managed separately. But when I look at our role here, then I think as communicators, there are three stakeholders become very, very critical for us in this saving lives business. The first is our employees. Mm-hmm. The second is our patients. And within the patients, I also call about the doctors and the healthcare community. And the third is society at large. So when I look at the first, which is our employees, of course, I mean, all the concerns laid out by all the, right now are there. But for our employees, day and night, they go to hospitals. That's their working field, right? We are 90% of our employee force is out there on the field. They do calls to doctors, etc. The first question they ask is, am I at risk? Why are you making me work? Am I supposed to be working? How do you protect me? And those are the things. So the first thing for us was employee safety. So I have to say that, communicators can only communicate if there is substance. And that substance came because all of us as the leadership team stepped up and said, what are the decisions? They were harsh decisions we had to take for business. And we said, what are the decisions that we need to take to protect employees and their family? We set up a war room just for employees to reach out with concerns and for them or their families and anyone who suspected anything. There are doctors in our organization who could guide them to the right place, etc. And that war room is 24/7, which include doctors from our organization, supply chain management people, as well as HR, etc. So that was the first sort of universe. The second universe, which is very, very important, we're looking at a crisis. We're looking at a crisis where at least I shouldn't be saying this, but if you're tested for COVID, you get a hospital, right? But imagine you're an oncology patient. Imagine you need your next drug, you're on a life-saving drug, you need your next dose. Imagine that's not able to reach you. There's air cargo issue, there's supply chain issues, there's misinterpretation of orders where we've heard of distribution people being beaten up by cops because they don't know what the orders are. And so as communicators, the role that we play there then is of policy advocates. We become policy advocates, we take all of these issues, we then take them to the government, to different authorities, different associations that we're part of. And we take those issues and we try and resolve them. And we also communicate to our partners then, because our partners, wholesalers, distributors, supply chain people are scared to come for work, saying, we don't know whether all of this is in order. So that's the second very critical role that we play. We need to ensure continuity. For us, business continuity is not just about the numbers. The numbers can wait. The business continuity is about the number of lives we need to touch right now to ensure our diabetes medicines, our vaccines, our oncology medicines, and others reach the patients who need them. So that's the second bulk. And the third really is giving back to society. Us in the healthcare field, giving back to society, a lot of us manufacture these things that are required, whether they're ventilators, whether they're masks, whether they are others, and not just about our company, but if I look across the spectrum, the kind of ways that different companies are stepping up is phenomenal completely. So, and us as communicators have a strong role to play to bridge the communication between these partners and also talk externally about it so that people are aware of the relationships that are there. And ultimately, I think this is where we can really, really play an important role if we bridge between all of these. And I have to say that I see the communication picking up like it always does. So I'm just going to stop here because I'm so passionate about this right now that I think I can just go on and on. We're living.
Of course. And just on that thread building, I want to maybe drop a question to Deepshika, because you're somebody, you are supporting many, healthcare and pharma companies, both on the media strategy, PR strategy side of things. So how are your teams stepping in and stepping up to sort of provide that continuity from between the outside and the inside for your clients? Yeah. And whether it is about reputation advisory, whether it is about PR strategy, whether it is about employee communications or media tactics, can you share that with us?
Yeah, no, I have to say, Jyotsna, this is really interesting listening to you and how from within a healthcare company, there's so much that's going on for you. So when we are talking to our clients, we're asking them to really do 3 or 4 key things. There's just so much coming at them. That's the other problem. Everybody is sending various things to do. So we're saying first, stay very focused on what do you stand for? What is your objective? And like you rightly mentioned, with your customers, your patients, with your employees and your business partners. And you need to be very clear that you're then going to work towards those objectives. It's very easy to get distracted with so much conversation, discussions going on today. And what's the purpose of your business? And how do you give back to the community? And in this time, it's not about how am I going to make the next set of profits, or my Q4 numbers or Q2 numbers are not looking great, but how am I actually going to stand out there and see this as an opportunity to make an impact in a good manner. The second one is actually staying a little ahead of the curve. I think it's important for the businesses, especially in the healthcare space, as well as the essential services space, to actually look at how do we look at the various scenarios that are going to develop. Can we put down what could happen next week from here, given this is our expertise and domain knowledge space? So can we actually see what should be the action be required to be done to mitigate some of the risks which are coming up later? The common man is not going to be able to figure that one out and is confused, which is where also it's our responsibility to, to bust some of those myths. There is just so much conversation about these medicines are okay, these are not okay. If you have this, it'll actually exaggerate the virus. And we've all seen these conversations going on around there. So this is our opportunity to also be responsible and disseminate the right kind of information and actually make that effort to bust some of those myths. It's not that, okay, it's not about my company or my drug and therefore let me not do anything about it. And of course, WHO is doing its bit about putting out the advisories, but what can we do more to make sure that the wrong kind of information doesn't spread? The third is collaborating and staying connected with our industry. Really listening intently. If you just give me a second, I think there's a phone ringing. Sorry. The third is really staying collaborated and connected with our industry and listening intently to the conversations. Social media is bursting with discussions and conversations. So as your advisors, we're actually helping you listen intently, pull out the insights from there, and enabling our clients to react and have the right kind of perspective, viewpoint, and even come up with the right kind of ideas on how do we collaborate further. This is not something which is going to end in 3 weeks. Trust me. We don't know how long this is going to be. No textbook, no earlier virus has been of this level of impact. Human impact as well as economic impact. So we're all in uncharted territory. So we have to evaluate every step that we are taking, keep talking, keep listening, and deciding what should be the next action, which is going to help make a difference to our stakeholders.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And just talking about, the lifelines, one obviously is the medical side of it, the wellness side of it, mental health side of it. The other is just basic access to everyday essentials, right? And I wanted to come to Rakesh because I know, Rakesh, your team supports many e-commerce companies. And I wanted to broaden the conversation a little bit to see how interesting it is to look at consumer, shopping patterns and how this crisis has sort of affected that. And even after this pandemic, right, I think there will be a huge shift towards online shopping in many, many sectors, many retail sectors. So what are some of your learnings so far from this pandemic, and what are you going to be taking away, and how will you be advising clients, whether it is about increased customer demand or trying to maintain, stock levels or delivery performance, or just keeping their frontline staff safe, during these difficult times and beyond?
Sure, Bianca. Thank you. Thank you. I think I'll just take it forward from what Jyotsna and Deepshika just said. The role of essentials, or even the definition of essentials right now as we know it, has changed, and everything is so dynamic that what we were discussing last month doesn't hold water, and what we are discussing today might change next week as well. So in that context, there are 3 or 4 key points that I just want to make. Learning from what you talked about, e-commerce or supply chain right now, I think the whole advocacy space that Jyotsna talked about has a new meaning. I mean, we got hit by this crisis, but in the last 36 hours to 48 hours, there have been very strong levels of consultation between corporates as well as the government and other stakeholders. And I have to say, those have been extremely efficient, and those have been very, very productive, and we will see normalcy returning, in terms of essential supplies. So that's a huge sort of a positive I see. But beyond that, I think the continuity with safety is the new norm for some time. I mean, what was taken for granted is not going to be anymore true for the next few weeks or few days. So that safety and continuity have become part of every single sentence. It's not just one part. Then comes the role of what do you prioritize? We all need to reprioritize. So prioritization towards the maximum good is what is right now being focused on. And when you have maximum good as your mantra for prioritization, then we are seeing all the stakeholders actually coming to a common page and resolving these issues. And that there comes the new level of efficiency. It's too early to talk about anything beyond this, but I think from a part of role that we all play as communicators, I would say that we all need to sort of play the role of multipliers that we do, because we take information and we process it and take it to so many people for different business objectives and different desired outcomes. So while we are playing that role as multipliers and as amplifiers, I think we need to start thinking about calming nerves and maintaining this basic essential safety with continuity, and then hopefully start getting ourselves ready for recovery as well. Long way to go, but we are all have to do this together, and surely we'll get there.
We will. We'll get through this. It's just one day at a time. Sujita, I wanted to just go back to a point that was made earlier, which was about empathy and employee communications. And you are leading, the comms and marketing and the brand for such a large, diversified group of companies. And so what's your sense? How are you sort of tackling some of these immediate challenges, not just from a customer and consumer standpoint, but just your very large employee base?
I was on mute, so sorry for that. Good question. I think I'm enjoying the conversations. Thank you so much for setting this up. I think it's a very pertinent topic that you're talking on. When it comes to employee communications, I think, and as well as the brand communication, I think one of the mantras that we've undertaken currently is to have 5 key things happening with us. First thing is communicate, and communicate more in terms of be communicative. It's all the more important. People need to know what's happening in reality. The communications has to have a nuance, like it has to be more authentic currently. It has to be more verified so that people get the right information. It has to be compassionate in tone, in terms of, it cannot be pompous at this moment. And most important, it has to be constructive so that it leaves a positive impact on the employees or whoever is receiving the communication. And most importantly, it has to be united in terms of various brands, various brand managers, various communication professionals across geographies, across the nation. Everyone needs to be talking the same language. And I'm sure if we follow these 4 or 5 aspects, we shall prevail. I think the bigger issue is how are we going to be, packaging our stuff for the next 3-4 months, because these are times which nobody has seen before. These are times which are so vulnerable that I can give an example that, when hand wash is being spoken about so predominantly across the country, a brand like ours, if it goes out into the market and talks about hand wash, it is seen as opportunistic. Where do you draw the line? I think that's a bigger worry for a communicator in terms of how do you manage your reputation in these situations. Even if we start giving away sanitizers and hand washes to people, and not that we're not giving, but the vulnerability is still that to be seen as an opportunistic brand. That is a bigger challenge for brand managers and Corpcom professionals in our industry in terms of how do we operate or manifest our duties in a way that we're seen as authentic. I think that authenticity parameter is going to take a huge, jump. I think what is more important also going forward for me and my team, and I'm sure all the esteemed panelists will agree, is what are we going to do in the next 3 months in terms of what are the new competencies? This is going to be a completely new normal, which is going to, engross us. What are the new competencies that we're going to be adhering to? When events are not happening on ground, how are we going to launch products? Business has to move on. I mean, these are things that a communicator needs to start thinking. There are no right or wrong answers, but I'm sure they'll evolve. We are grappling with it right now. I can't say we have a 100% answer for that. But of course, the steps are in those areas like Rakesh also spoke about in terms of prioritizing things. What are things that are must do? What are things that we can let go? What are things that, can be really postponed for certain times? I think there are a lot of more bigger decisions than just the communicator's job, which are actually grappling all of us currently. I'll come back again on more thoughts.
No, so I want to pick up something that you said, Sujit, and take that to Purnima, which I thought is something that a lot of brands are struggling with right now, which is how much to communicate.
Exactly.
Yes, communicate, but what is over communication? And there is a lot of negative sentiment out there in the market. And so Purnima, give me your sense. How do you stop, as a communicator, as a PR strategist, how do you stop a brand from over communicating to the point where you're seen as an opportunistic brand?
Right. Thank you, Bianca. And it's great to be here sharing our experiences. So I think the current situation that we are all faced with, we are really focused on communicating very broadly, focused on the well-being of our employees, supporting our customers, partners, and communities, as all of us are. I think there's an intentional focus on driving broader employee communication. We are ensuring that we are communicating more frequently. And as we are seeing more and more individuals and organizations, they are adjusting to work from home, online education as a new current reality. We feel that there is a need for more frequent touch points. We are also seeing external and internal events, meetings, they are all converting into virtual meetings. And how do we as a company support that? So technology is a real enabler. And we are working with technology to be able to help everyone in our ecosystem stay productive, stay connected, and using our collaboration and productivity tools to ensure that communication and work is not hampered and there's least disruption for everyone at this time.
Thanks. No, thanks for that. And sorry if I look distracted. I was just trying to look up if there are any questions that are coming in right now. But thanks for that one. And I wanted to stay on that topic a little bit and maybe have Nandita, you and Rahul, both of you sort of talk a little bit more about that entire conversation around what is the next 3 months going to look like, next 2 months going to look like, because, too much uncertainty, and you can't really advise clients or your own teams when you yourself don't know which way the business is going to go, right? So what kind of advisory are you giving out right now, especially around being able to be seen as a brand that you can trust, a brand that is invested in the community and doing the right thing? So Nandita, if you can take that first, and then we'll go to Rahul.
So, thanks, Bianca. I think I personally believe that we are actually going back to basic fundamentals. In many ways, I think the whole digital era actually kind of took us into a time of hyperactivity. I think what we are now seeing is a pause. And how do we actually make the most of this pause? And I must tell you this. So far, we've been advising all our clients on scale, on all the kind of buzzwords that dominated the business environment. And today, we're advising clients on what to say when there is nothing to say. And yet, Bianca, what's interesting is that we're discovering there is so much to say that hasn't been said all along. To Sujit's point about communicating internally. There is so much, you've got to kind of keep talking about various policies, what it means for employees. And I think all of us as business leaders do have, maybe we're living in uncertain times, but we do have a sense of where our own businesses are heading. So, and I think it is for us to demonstrate that leadership and give a broad framework within which we can work within. And even for the here and now, there's a lot to communicate. One of the things that keeping us all busy is stakeholder communication. And media is at a lull. We've kind of paused where media relations is concerned, and we're kind of pulling out all the the expertise and experience that we've had in all aspects of communication, of public relations, internal communications, analyst relations, advocacy, crisis communication. And it's fascinating to see this entire bouquet of, elements of aspects of public relations that we're getting to work on these days. So in many ways, we've gone back to the true definition of public relations, because now we're actually doing true stakeholder communication.
Yep. And you can't do this single-handedly, right? Because that's the whole point of public relations. There is an element of public good in this. And so Rahul, can you come in here and talk a little bit about what is the role of communicators and PR strategists in partnering with the government, with local agencies, to be able to, take the right messages out, do the right thing, both for their own, own people, as well as for the brands that they are either advising or the brands that they work with.
Thanks, Bianca, and good to be here. I think this huge disruption that has happened, which has been totally unexpected, has probably permanently changed several things. And I think for corporates, what it means is that it's not only about talking about their brand, but it also means very high-end, very active engagement with all stakeholders, especially the government. Because what we are seeing today is an event that is going to change the way governments think. Several policies will have to undergo change. There has to be a completely new set of thought process that needs to come in among all stakeholders that we as agencies deal with, whether it's a client, whether in our case, a lot of it is with the government. And the other important thing is that there's going to be, specifically from an Indian point of view, there are going to be two aspects to it. One is the central government policies, and then down the line, the state government policies. What you see today is that the central government has set a sort of an agenda how to deal with the situation as it is evolving. But eventually, everything that needs to get done has to be done at the state level, right? Now, which means you have to engage at many more levels than you had to earlier. So in this kind of a situation where we still don't know where it's going to end, I mean, I don't think we have reached the peak. It's only beginning to happen now. What are we going to be left with 2 months down the road? Very difficult to say. I think the government is doing a great job of managing the situation. And I think all our clients are also trying to do that, learning different ways to manage this very unexpected event that has occurred across the globe. in the next 2-3 months, I think we are all going to be coming out very different people. Our businesses are going to look very different. Our engagement strategies are going to be different. Our future is going to be very different. At an individual level or a corporate level or a government level, society as such is going to look very different. And having said that, I think we are still in the process of understanding how it's going to go and what's going to happen. But the messages that we are giving our clients is, it's probably a good time to sit back and take a hard look at how you have done your business as yet. What are the new priorities that are going to come up, and prepare yourself. Because the good part is once this ends, there's going to be a whole lot of different new economic activity that will offer lots of different new opportunities.
Yeah, it's actually tough to prepare yourself right now because you don't know what you're up against. And Amit, I had a question for you, and I have more questions, but then I see quite a few interesting questions coming through from our audiences. So, Amit, one of the questions that has come in, it's quite interesting. It says, how do companies and government they deliver trustworthy messages at a time when people are divided, not just by their own ideology and their belief systems, but by a very real algorithmic bubble which surrounds them with one-sided stories and misinformation and even disinformation. That's a very interesting point. So, Amit, if you can weigh in on that. I don't know who sent this though.
Well, I think that's pretty interesting. But I think the only way you can be genuine in times like this is to be authentic. And the problem with any messaging today, and especially from government sources, is that they themselves are not able to piece together the moving pieces, right? So in times like this, it's very difficult to validate data and data points because, let's be honest, a country like ours is so large, and while it is trying to get organized, there are still a lot of gaps in data points. So who do you really trust? I think all that governments try to do is, with sincerity, communicate and be as authentic as possible. But I think the best way today to engage and have meaningful message comprehension is to ensure that when you're sending out messaging, when you're engaging with the stakeholders, your communities, there will be feedback, because there will be pushback on a few aspects which people may disagree with or people may want to improve upon. And at that stage, I think the maturity with the authorities will serve them well if they listen to those comments, listen to that feedback, and then carve out a collective, progressive way forward. I think that's the best way going forward. There's no perfect answer right now.
Right. Of course, there isn't any perfect answer. It's a tough situation. But maybe we can dwell a little bit more on the whole misinformation side of things and the role that communications and marketing teams and PR agencies have in, being able to tackle that. And so I'm thinking if, Amandeep, if you can come in on that and talk a little bit about the whole aspect of miscommunication and disinformation, and how do you think that we can all sort of live up to that challenge of tackling some of that?
Okay. Thanks, Priyanka. As an organization which is right on the forefront, the supply of essential services in the city of Delhi, we're keeping the people, the burners in the kitchens burning, and of course, supplying energy to the vehicles. The message was very clear, right from the top management, right on the day one, that our people are having dual responsibility. First one responsibility is to be the law-abiding citizens of the country, to adhere to all the advisories which are time to time. And secondly, as the providers of essential services, we have to stand up for the occasion and put our best foot forward. And because this is the time wherein the right communication has to go even to the last person who's filling the gas at our CNG stations. We have to keep them motivated for 21 days. And I believe for every organization, currently CSR is playing a major role. We are already in touch with a large number of government agencies. We are trying to arrange all the supplies for them. And PR is actually shifted from PR to, again, entire stakeholder communication, where the miscommunication from the organizations has to be nipped in the bud right at the first moment. because, and I believe social media is playing a major role in this. We have a lot of, because since we are a public utility company and every day in regard to services, we can't really put our guard down at any point of time. People are armed with all their devices. They can take any picture of the service there. So this is the time when all of us are under the scanner, especially the people who are in the essential services. And this is also an opportunity for them to build up on their brand image, and which is going to be helpful for them in the future also. And another aspect which I would like to come is being a humane organization is another aspect which every organization can look at, wherein miscommunication can be covered. And it stems down right from the top. It's not just about how you're communicating, how you're doing your business, but even in the terms, since we are at almost fag end of the financial year, we're fag end of the month. And one thing which has come right from the top is that all the payments of all the vendors and contractors has to be made in time so that they are able to employ their employees. So that is the humane angle. At that level, if the organizations can think, then I think all with all miscommunication you're talking about, a lot of it is taken care of.
Absolutely, yeah. And then the role that we can play also depends on where businesses are going, and thereby how much resources we have to be able to tackle that. And so, Roma, if you and both Sudeep, I wanted both your viewpoints on this one. At a time when marketing comms budgets are obviously going to get slashed, we're already seeing that. How do you balance out? And this is also going back to the point that Val made earlier, that CEOs are under a lot of pressure right now. So when you have very limited budget and resources to be able to execute the vision and the plan that you'd want to actually go to market with, how do you balance that?
So should I start, or would you like Roma to go first?
Sure.
All right.
So
Thank
go
you.
ahead, and then we'll go to Roma.
Thanks. So I think a lot of interesting discussion that has happened since about an hour ago has actually sort of suggested this with the new world emerging and the ways of work changing. Similarly, the marketing campaigns and programs are also going to change. I mean, how many of us will actually go out and do some large scale events now when you know that you will be able to get a strong digital audience which will be more comfortable attending it, feeling safe and secure in the confines of their own secure premises. So that obviously is going to define the way you're going to work. The style of your working is going to define how you're going to do your marketing communication. Similarly, Sujit referred earlier to brand authenticity, and that's going to come sharply whenever you come from a crisis. And the closest corroboration that you could look at something of a global era was when the Second World War had happened, and you had certain countries whose economies really zoomed because they were able to absorb the pressures and transform themselves to capitalize on the forced disruptions which had happened. And that's the opportunity for us as marketing communicators as to how quickly and swiftly we're able to transform and move forward towards the next orbit. Otherwise, if you're going to try and do the same thing in the same manner, it's just not going to work. So we'll have to be far more creative, far more imaginative, yet stick to the core values and reach out to all stakeholders, because the customer is not just the god. Ultimately, there are several other stakeholders who will be responsible for businesses to emerge successful post this trauma.
Yeah. And I think this crisis, has proved, it's not like we needed proof, but, it's proof that business, technology, campaign, whatever it is, right? It's centered around people, the human element. And how does the brand make you feel at a time like this, right? So I hate to call this pandemic an opportunity because people are losing lives and their livelihoods, but it is actually in a way an opportunity for all of us to be a little bit more creative, a little bit more bold, a little bit more against the grain, so it were. But Roma, to the point that Sudeep was making a little bit earlier, and this is also an interesting question tailing onto that from Prakruti, who's asking that some brands are now choosing to be silent in this period, especially if they're, in the essential commodities business, etc. I know you can't directly possibly speak to that, but the question is that even a wise step to be silent in this situation? A lot of companies are choosing to be silent after they tried something, backfired, a lot of negative, comments on social media, etc. And they've just chosen to stay silent, pulled all of their media budgets, everything. What do you think of that?
that we just can't be silent.
Roma, hi. Not to,
Hi, can you hear me now?
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so you talked about the brand, and for the brand, I think it needs to have continuity, and we needed to establish that. So we definitely felt that communicating on the brand has to continue. We've been doing it for some time, and we've been cleverly crafting messaging more in the virtual space. So that for us was an advantage. So we continued to do that. We didn't stop there. We probably rejig the messaging because there was a lot of uncertainty and kind of chaos prevailing in the minds of our employees and our external stakeholders. So we had to address them in different layers. You suddenly become, your role completely changes. You become a sounding board. You also are part of the top management and talking, about business continuity at one time, the employee welfare on the other side. And for us, because we are essential commodities which we give to the nation, we suddenly are seen with a lot of interest that how are we going to manage our businesses? What is the media talking to us about? I've been flooded with media queries on, are we continuing to keep our operations open? How do we take care of our employees? So the first thing what we did, we distilled everything on that day. The day when this became critical, we all came together. We took a conscious decision, a task force was formed, and that task force really led the conversations. Both, whether it's for the brand, and you know that our brand is got a very, very apt tagline, which is Desh ki Zaruratton ke liye. So we took that on, and we really rejigged our communication around that. We first announced also, because for the external community, we just can't say we are bothered only about ourselves or our employees. We went out and immediately instituted a fund, which was announced along with a couple of other companies. What is becoming very important, what is worrying, is the mental health, because that is something now is coming to the fore, because millennials are now questioning. There are older people in their homes who are questioning them. So I think that's a larger piece to address. We have now put in a lot of people in our own systems. Helplines have been now brought in. And I think that is going to be a different order in terms of communication. And that's something I never felt that we would be really participating in. I think all of us have a duty. I think that part needs to be really, addressed in a different way. Every company says you're humane, you do the right things, but how do you do it in a continuous process? So we all came together, about 20, 30 communicators within the organization. We completely rejigged our communication strategy. I think that has helped us really build that trust, because we are an essential commodity. Our plants have to run, and we have to run them safely. We have to run them with minimum people on the shop floor. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
Certain situations, but we're combating it at all locations with all CEOs having their task force and their war rooms 24/7 with their helplines.
That's a great approach, Roma. Thanks for sharing that. And you're right, all of us are just rethinking whether or not the campaigns we had lined up, they even make sense. I mean, I'm looking at all of my entire content strategy, and half the things that I have planned just do not make sense. That messaging doesn't make sense post-pandemic. To a point that Roma made just a little while ago about mental health, there's an interesting question that's coming from Saraswati Mohan. I believe she's in IBM. And Nitin and Val, if you can comment on that. This is the new normal. People are, cooped up in their homes with people all day that they may or may not like. It's difficult to get used to this kind of circumstances. How are we going to focus on the mental health aspect, which is very important, right? Because we have right now multiple generations in the workforce in our companies. So Nitin, if you want to take that first, and then Val, if you can go next.
Oh, I think it's absolutely critical. I think across the board, we've seen people raising concerns. They're working alone. Some cases they're working alone. Some cases they're living in small places. Some cases they're living with families who they may or may not get along with, to be honest. And the challenge is not just remote working. The challenge is that they don't have any access to do anything after remote working for the day. They can't go out. They can't meet anybody. They don't have any recreation activities they can do. So yes, that's a real challenge, and I think there's small things we are helping them with as an association, as an industry association, as PRCA as well. We're running a campaign around that. You'll see it's already kicked off. We're giving people small tips on what they can do. We're doing a lot of virtual meetings. We're doing virtual, some small teams are doing virtual lunches with their teams. They're doing virtual, having tea. We are hosting a drinks tomorrow evening on Friday at about 5:30 with the whole agency. I don't know if that worked, but I hope it does. So there's different ways we're trying to get them all together to engage. At the same time, we've made groups of people who are talking to their subordinates and their teams on a daily basis to find out how we can help them and support them at this time. I mean, there's a lot that I can keep speaking about, but it's a real issue. I have to say, big issue.
Yeah, Nitin, as Nitin said, it's a very real issue because some of the kids are living away from their families and they're staying by themselves, and you don't realize it unless and until you actually reach out through the use of technology. I mean, thanks to technology today that we're able to actually have these face-to-face calls. Otherwise, you never know what somebody is feeling on the other side. So we do these regular calls and check-ins with young kids, especially who are living by themselves. Yes, like Nitin said, doing happy hours, one and getting teams to kind of virtual happy hours and have coffee with your teams, etc. That's kind of things that we're motivating the kids to really make use of. But what's most important is unless you ask, they won't tell you, and some of them don't even know where to communicate. So we have a little helpline which we've tied up with a NGO for mental health. So there's a helpline that we circulate, and we're happy to circulate that across to various others as well, to actually let them have, like Nitin said, after they finish working, they're just in their homes alone, right? And they don't have anyone to speak to, or they can't go down for a walk, they can't gym, they can't whatever. So there's a helpline to actually have talk to somebody if they need to, and they can't talk to any of their peers, if they're uncomfortable talking to any of their peers. Staying with people, some of them have 5 or 6 members in one house, which is very hard actually at some time, or to kind of deal with everybody at home. Finding quiet corners to have conference calls, making sure that you are still there for clients during this period of time. The time is really hard for everybody. So we have to be a little bit more understanding as leadership from various, as part of leadership at various agencies, and not put too much pressure, but at the same time keep the engagement rolling and running, and make sure we're talking to them on a regular basis.
Yeah, and even I'm seeing so much of unprecedented level of kindness and collaboration and empathy between people, just within complexes, or whether it is between companies and agencies. So I'm going to give a minute each to all of the leaders on the agency side to just give me a sense of, like Val and Nitin did, anything special or specific that you're doing for your people, because that's really important. We're in the people business at the end of the day, right? So maybe if Deepshika, you want to start, and then I'll throw it one minute to each of you, please.
So I think work from home is, interestingly, in Genesis, it's been done for many, many years. So when this happened, I have to be honest, a lot of people pretty much knew what had to be done, how it had to be managed, and technology supported it tremendously. But yes, like Nitin and Val also talked about, the elongated periods of work from home is something which is much newer, and not even being able to step out of your home. So yes, we are also getting on to team calls done every day, we're doing these virtual get-togethers and parties, and I think tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock, I have a leadership drinks party on, and then every team we are doing it with. So it's all about, I think, connecting with each of our people. We are some 375 people across the country, so it's not easy, but we are making our best efforts to do that as much as possible. And I think just listening to them and being there for them. That's what is required now.
Yeah. Compassion and empathy. And Rakesh, I wanted to go to you, but then I also do have another specific question slightly different take on this is how do you ensure that people don't make a mistake? Because it's just so there is no right or wrong, like we said earlier, right? So how can, and we have people who are, millennials, maybe even boomers in our team. How can we stop people from making a mistake, which doesn't seem like an obvious mistake at this point?
Right. So I think that's really, really very important question, and the answer is a very tough one because these times making mistakes is is very possible. But having said that, I think as leaders and as organizational structures, we have to do everything by way of being ahead of the curve in order to reduce mistakes. But mistakes will happen, and we have to collectively overcome that. And in terms of being ahead of the curve, I think Deepshikha and Amit and Nitin talked about a lot of important points. I would just add to those and say that there is a very important aspect of maintaining rhythm and routine. So one important aspect that here comes in is that how is work from home being managed? How interactions between clients and ourselves are being managed, or meetings are being managed, obviously technology and virtual, but the timing of this, getting started on time, getting early, having the day routine set, and then letting the work from home does not mean that it's 24/7. It has to have a sense of rhythm and routine. That's very important to maintain, honestly, sanity in these crazy times.
Yeah. And then Amit, I thought maybe you might want to jump in here, because I'm thinking a lot of our communications to our people also has to be about listening and not taking up too much airtime in just talking about, oh, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to do things, right? So just the way we communicate has to change as well, because this is no longer business as usual.
Yeah, I think I just want to step back. I think one thing that we should avoid doing, and we have avoided at least, is be non-prescriptive. Yes, we can issue guidelines, we can create SOPs, but they have to be non-prescriptive. Everybody's house, everybody's dwelling, everybody's remote location is very unique to them, and you have to give them that space to work out that rhythm. We have had teams working at different time zones, creating their own different routines, what works for them, their own checks and balances, whatever comes in. I think there's no other way but to trust your colleagues to do what is right, back them up to the hilt, and really let it run. We're all doing this for the first time. I myself have got so much help for some of my younger colleagues who are probably much more adept at technology and working from home than I am. Frankly, it's a learning space for all of us. But I just wanted to bring one thing. I think there's a massive opportunity to turn this on the head. And we a collective call that just all of us will take this COVID challenge and turn it on its head. So we launched something called DWalk. DWalk is hashtag DWalk, which is actually COVID spelled backwards. And we said we will push this goddamn thing way back where it belongs. And everybody, each one of our 485 colleagues is signing up, as some of them have already done, some in the process of signing up. One challenge they're doing that they will take up, which will make sure that they emerge stronger on the other side of in the post-corona world. And it could be health, it could be a skill, it could be anything. It could be just cleaning up your cabinet. It's non-prescriptive. We just sent it out, set it up about 24 hours back. But it's about sharing a very positive intent that we shall overcome, we are together. And, it's the human spirit. We need to just keep charging ourselves up in ways that we don't have to depend on anybody, right? So let's see how it goes. The first reaction has been absolutely phenomenal. We have colleagues who are signing up from learning a new language to 50 new cocktails to 40 new ways of saying I love you in different languages. To each his own. As long as you keep making something. You only said one thing, right? There's a rhythm and there's a routine. But even if you had to substitute only your commute time, which you're saving every day, right? Both ways, half an hour minimum, 1 hour, easy, right? In some cases, much more. Just use that. Just use that.
Yep. Unusual times definitely call for unusual approaches. And Sonia, you are in a very unique position because there's a lot of, it's about content, it's about entertainment, and your audiences are different. The staff that you have probably is different. I know that, in my team, I have very young, folks who are taking this isolation in a very different way. So my approach to them has changed completely. How are anything interesting that you are doing that you would recommend people do, like, whether it is Marie Kondo, your entire cupboard that you've been planning to clean up at some point, or just
So
binge watch?
initially,
What is it?
okay. So initially, when the task force was set up, there was an idea that we gave as a team that why don't we have a psychologist on call, 24/7. And 90% of the task force rejected the idea and said, you know what, they have their families, in fact, they'll be able to talk to them more and their friends and they'll connect it. And, some of us really pushed this hard through. And I can tell you, Priyanka, that on day one of quarantine, we started with, of the lockdown, we started with 10 calls. Today, the psychologist is inundated with phone calls. She gets about 30 calls a day. So that's on the managing 1,500 employees. But a sort of empathy also needs to come in from each of us as leaders or team members, where you do your regular check-ins with the team and you have a non-agenda call with them. You have a non-agenda conversation with them. You continue your virtual chai breaks with them. How is it that you can have those same conversations that you would have downstairs at a tapri wala? How can you continue that virtually? So those things are happening right now, but have a non-agenda call with them. That really goes down well with each of the team members. That's the feedback I've got. But if one can actually invest in getting a psychologist on board for being available 24/7, I would really recommend that. That would really help.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. And I just got this interesting question that's come in from Ritesh Shetty, and I thought maybe at this point, if Rahul and Anuj, if you can just jump in, and in the interest of time, since we only have 7 minutes, the question is, will the role of PR consultants now change to wearing a hat of alliance management? Should we now manage alliances with social impact movement groups and drive the narrative of empathy? So Rahul, if you can come in first, and then Anuj, and we'll try and keep it short.
Yeah, I think yes. I think that's like I said earlier, empathy is going to be extremely important, not only externally, but as well as internally. And these two things, I mean, one of the good things that I noticed today is that both the client and the agency are in the same boat. We are all struggling with similar challenges. And I think that sort of brings the two together and makes the relationships more stronger as we go forward. But yes, in this different world, as we get out of it, a lot of things are going to be very different, and this is definitely one of them. Yes, I'm keeping it short.
Yeah, thank you. Anuj, any thoughts there?
I don't think Anuj is there.
Okay, no worries. And maybe perhaps, Sujit, are you there? Can you jump in on this question as well, and give a sense of how you're tackling that maybe at the Godrej Group of Companies? I don't hear him either unless he's speaking on mute. Sujit, I can hear you now.
Hello.
Hi, Sujit, you're audible. Go ahead.
Hello.
Sujit, can you? Yep, you're audible, Sujit. Go ahead.
Hello.
Okay, that doesn't seem to be working, unfortunately. Sujit, one last time. Okay, we'll move on to another, and this is the final question. It's coming from Anup, and he says that, given the credibility or trust or the lack thereof in influencers and media, how are brands and companies and agencies supposed to tackle that? So I'm going to throw that question to Purnima and to Amandeep. Purnima, can you go first?
Yes, thank you. And that's a great question. So I think it's times like this that really require require very authentic communication from brands and really talk about what they stand for and what their values are. I think in our case, we really focus on empathy, and we've heard a lot about empathy in this last 1 hour, and that's really the need of the hour today as we communicate across stakeholders. So that's key. Authentic communication, trust is a core value. So I think as we use technology as an enabler across our entire ecosystem, I think those are aspects that are front and center for us.
Amandeep, just a quick word on that one.
This disruption is going to change the way we work, the way we communicate with each other forever. We've seen the lighter side of the people also during these times. We've connected with them. And as far as the organization's influences are concerned, this is the time where our frontline staff can really make a difference. The level of services they are keeping up with that. I'll give you an example that never in the organization would we see in a scenario like this. Like our HR department every day gives a call to every employee to look that everything is fine in their family. So many of our youngsters who are on the frontline duties, even in the control rooms, to keep the services going, they are actually motivated. And even within our HODs, we have also divided that any control room near our place. So there are 50 of control rooms which we are operational. We make it a point to call the control room head every day that everything is fine, you required any services. So they don't feel that they are the only ones who are defending the brand of the organization right on the front. Everybody is involved, and the role of CEO, no doubt about it. The entire thing, the entire message is going across that everybody is caring for that. So as far as the influencers are concerned, all the influencers within the organization, outside the organization, this is the time for unity, and this message is going to be remembered over a period of time.
Indeed. And coming together, I guess, to talk through challenges and the future and impact, that's really everything. Unfortunately, completely out of time. I'm going to have to wrap because you're all busy and we need to go back to our other WebEx calls. So, but we came together, this group came together yesterday, and then we decided that this is the time for us to come together as a community. And so we've put together a little pledge that all of us have signed. And I want to read that out to all of you who's on the call right now. And I'm going to be requesting all the industry bodies, the trade associations, the media, the academic institutions to really adopt it and sign the pledge and put it up on their website. So it reads, we promise to stay safe as individuals, as families, as firms, and as a fraternity. We promise to stand by our clients, our partner firms, by our organizations, by our colleagues and their businesses with reinforced dedication and commitment, upholding the highest values of professionalism. We promise to work harder than ever to be available for our colleagues and ensure that business continuity and delivery for clients does not get hampered. We promise to be fair, to be kind, to be ethical, and stand by each other in every way possible. And we promise to unite in spirit, to emerge stronger and better than ever before. Can I request for a show of hands from everybody right now that supports this pledge and will be upholding this in the coming days, weeks, and months as we, together go through this, pandemic. So with that, I'm completely out of time. So I'm going to hand this over to Hemant for a quick vote of thanks and wrap up. Really enjoyed this conversation. Hemant?
Thank you. Thanks so much, Bianca, for guiding this incredibly insightful conversation. I know it wasn't easy. And thanks to all the panelists for taking the time for this conversation. Amidst whatever is going on, such efforts go a really long way in demonstrating to our community that despite all these challenges, we can still thrive. Thanks to all the attendees who participated in this experiment, and I'm sure took away some very valuable insights as well. Thanks for taking this pledge. 3 organizations have come forward besides us to sign this pledge. Reputation Today, PRCAI, and SCORE itself, and more organizations can join in taking this pledge as well. You will find more details about this on reputationtoday.in and their Twitter handle, RepTodayMag, at RepTodayMag. We intend to host more such communications and business leaders in the coming days for similar conversations to keep our momentum of learning and engagement going. You may like to follow us on Twitter at ScoreIND for updates on those as well. Thanks once again for joining, and I hope to see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, fellow.